Yeah, so what we were really saying is that customizing the questionnaire to whichever method we're doing data collection, it's just a matter of common sense. We have to read the question and say, does this make sense for the cell filled up? Does this make sense for interview administered? Does it make sense for online versus physical mailer? Physical mailer, you can't have too many instructions, so on and so forth, right? That's all. It's just a matter of applying some common sense, some alertness, and we'll be fine. Okay, so can we go for the next point? So the next consideration in writing questionnaire design is what is the information we're trying to collect. So I mean, just by itself it is evident, right? Uh, a questionnaire should cover all the information which we want from the study. So what do? We have to start by writing saying, I want to collect this and this and this and this and this. We have to prepare a long list, right? Um, Now, this is a crucial task. This is sometimes a difficult task, but there are ways to make it easier. See, many market research studies can be fitted into reasonably standard protocols. For example, market research studies can be about testing the taste of a new product, right? Or it can be, for example, assessing the brand equity of a product, of a brand. Or it can be about finding out how satisfied our customers are, etc., etc., etc. Of course, there are studies which don't fit into this or that pattern, but the majority of studies fit into one or the other pattern. And when they fit into this pattern, there are, there's a lot of past experience to go on, which tells you what the list of information should be. So it is, on the face of it, it is a little difficult, but actually, there are things which make it a little easier, right? Nonetheless, the researcher needs a very clear understanding of the study objective and lots of patient effort. Patience is extremely important. Now, the problem is your long list sometimes is so long that the questionnaire becomes too big. In which case, it prevents the. Can we go back 2 3 slides? One more. One more. Yeah, this one. So just think about this. If we want comprehensive coverage, that means we want more and more data, then this is directly opposite to making it short and crisp. So there has to be that balance. I want more, but I don't want the respondent to get tired and give me junk. So there has to be an optimum balance between these two, right? So how do we try and get that optimum balance is what we're going to talk about here, right? Can we go forward? Yeah, we were here. So once you have written the long list of whatever you want to find out, you need to then break it up into, is it essential? As in, without the data, there's no point doing the study. It's absolutely must have. You have to cover the must have. Is it, hey, this is not essential, but it's really good if we have it? It's just one level below. Third is, since we're doing a study, let us collect this as well. That's optional, right? Now, if your length of the questionnaire, when you have the full thing, is too long, then first you drop this. You have to say, listen, it's going too long. I have to drop those optional things. I can't cover it. That's all. I have to be realistic. If it's still going too long, then from this, some of them we keep, some of them we drop. Right? We have to prioritize between this itself. And hopefully, when you do this, the length will become manageable. Because come what may, this has to be covered. Otherwise, there's no point doing the study. So even then it becomes too long, but it is very rare that happens. It's very rare that you need so much information that it's very rare that the list of essential areas is so big that the length becomes too high. It is normally manageable, but you have to apply the principle. You have to be ruthless in saying this is essential, this is not essential. Let me cut out what is not essential. Let me just retain what is essential. Right? Is this clear? So let's go forward. Yeah, so this is what I was saying just now. You estimate the time taken to cover the long list. And if the time is too long, then you first eliminate the optional points and then you eliminate the desirable points as well. Maybe some or all of them. That's only if it is still too long. Okay. So how do we say what is too long? We need some guidelines there. Okay. So the length of a questionnaire is not measured in number of questions. When people say how many questions will it have? Is it 20 questions, 30 questions? That's irrelevant. What matters is the time taken to complete the questionnaire. Right? So a telephonic survey should last for about 5 to 8 minutes, not more than that. Optimum is 5 minutes, maximum is 8 minutes. An online survey should be the same. When somebody is going to fill it up, get the patients beyond 8 minutes. They'll just switch off, or they'll just close the window and walk away. In which case, you've not even got whatever data they filled up to that point in time. A face-to-face survey, if you've got a person sitting across the table with you, let's say you've gone to the person's house or you've gone to the person's office, if the person is physically comfortable, then you can talk for about 10 minutes. Even though it should not be 20 minutes, half an hour. When I started my career 30 years ago, we used to talk for 25 minutes to a respondent. People are more patient, people have more time. Today they don't have time. So 10 to 12 minutes. Today 12 minutes would be the maximum. 10 minutes, 8 to 10 minutes would be the optimum. Again, here is where the common sense principle comes in. Not all face-to-face situation you can talk for 10 minutes. There are times we do something called a mole intercept study. Can you guess what this is? So you're standing at a mall, shopping mall, you catch people are walking around and you do an interview on the spot. You're intercepting them. Mall intercept studies. Or you can do also something called street corner studies. Street corner studies don't work these days because people don't trust anybody who comes and talks to them on the street. That's the time they used to work. But mall intercept studies can still work if the interviewer who's talking to the respondent is very, very presentable, very, very reassuring kind of personality. Now, in a mall, just because we have sit face to face, you can't talk to the person for 10 minutes. That's where the common sense principle comes. Yeah, I know face to face is 8 to 10 minutes, but in a mall, not more than 3 to 4 minutes, people have the patience to answer. He doesn't come there to talk to you, he's come there to do his own shopping work, right? So, I mean, whatever we say here is subject to the principle of marketing principles and common sense principles, right? Right. So, we said there is one more point to be covered in the context of the information coverage for the questionnaire, right? The respondent's ability to answer is also a key consideration. Just to give 2, 3 examples. There is no point asking a respondent which movies they saw 3 months ago on TV and OTT. You can't go and say, can you please list out all the movies that you saw 3 months ago on television and on Netflix and on Amazon? Nobody is going to remember. You can't ask a respondent the last 20 times you had the snacks to eat. How many times did you have chips? How many times did you have biscuits? How many times did you have some other savories? Nobody is going to remember. So the respondent's memory must not be stretched too far, right? So memory is one consideration here. Another consideration is, do you think you will change from Android to iPhone or to some other new technology in the next 3 years, 3 years from now? You don't know. Consumers don't know what they're going to do 2 years from now. Consumers don't even know what they're going to do 6 months from now, 1 year from now. Right? So when the respondent themselves don't know the answer, what's the point of asking them that questions? So the respondent's knowledge is an important consideration. Another example of respondent's knowledge is this. With an apology to all the fathers of the world. Generally speaking, it's a mother who knows what a child needs, what a child likes, what a child doesn't like. It's a mother who knows what the child likes potatoes but does not like greens. Father doesn't know these things or may at best know them very peripherally. So if you're doing a study about the child's food consumption, it's better to ask the mother and not the father. There are exceptions, but these are rules by and large, right? Yes. I'll just finish one more principle. As we saw earlier, there are sensitive subjects. You don't ask questions to which the respondent doesn't want to give an answer. You don't go and ask a respondent how much the income is, exactly in so many words. Can you please tell me how many rupees you take? They won't tell you. You don't ask a shopkeeper how many rupees worth of sales do you do every month. He won't tell you, right? You don't go and ask somebody, have you ever felt like killing your mother-in-law? The person can't say yes, how much he or she may want to, right? So there are sensitive subjects. You don't ask sensitive questions. But if you have to ask them, you first tell the respondent that there are, this interview is completely confidential. We're not going to record it. You give them some extra reassurances, right? So memory, knowledge, sensitivity are three things because the respondent may not be able to answer the question, right? Essentially, use your common sense. When in doubt, use your common sense. That's a principle always, right? Okay. Sorry, you had a doubt.
So when we are talking about knowledge,
Yeah.
one part of it is that they may or may not know, or they may or may not have thought of it, so they may not be able to give an answer. But do you think normally when we write questionnaires, we also need to keep in mind whether we are talking to a, let's say, postgraduate professional, or we talk to someone who is not so well qualified? Do we write questionnaires? Does it differ based on the educational qualification, or anything else? Anything so that it.
I understand the question. Um, Let me first answer the part that is easy to answer for me. The way you write a questionnaire for the B2B respondent, let's say purchase manager or the factory manager, would be different from the way you write a questionnaire for the B2C respondent, which is an individual consumer. And within this, you would use a different kind of question for the adult, a grown up, versus a child. For example, if you want to ask how satisfied are you with a particular product to an adult, you can use a verbal description. But maybe with a child, you need to have pictures. Maybe you need to say this means you're happy, this means you're neutral, this means you're not happy. Maybe you need to do those things, right? So straight away there is a difference. Now, why? Because the B2B person's knowledge level is different from the B2C person's. Because B2B person it's a domain related knowledge. Um, and definitely an adult's knowledge level is different from a child's knowledge level, an adult's comprehension level is different from a small child's comprehension level, so on and so forth. Extending that logic, you would say that a highly educated person is more articulate, can answer more complex scales, for example, more complex questions than a not educated person can. That much I would tend to agree with. But there's a caveat here, there's a caution here. The caution is that irrespective of whether the consumer is highly educated or absolutely illiterate at the other end of it, they still take decisions based on perceptions, based on emotions. And emotions and perceptions vary from person to person, not primarily based on education level. So, if the study is largely about perceptions, or it's about taste, for example, you want to know how people taste a biscuit, the fact that a person is highly educated or the person is not educated should not be a factor in determining what kind of questions you write.
So within B2C, the wordings would remain
Largely same, that is point number one. Point number two, extending what I'm saying just now, even for a highly educated person, you don't want to tire him or her out. You still want to make a questionnaire simple. If you remember, we started by saying a questionnaire has to be in consumer speak and not in marketing speak. Essentially means it has to be simple, it has to be direct, it has to be down to earth.
Yeah, but the consumer speak of, let's say, someone who's English educated, who's so
Very good,
used
very good,
to.
very good. So that's a very key consideration. The language of interview is a key consideration, and very often marketers and researchers tend to go wrong in this because um, marketing educated professionals, management professionals tend to think in English, whereas average consumer thinks in Hindi or Tamil or Bengali or Marathi as the case might be. So the researcher and the brand manager need to think in the local language to make sure that the questionnaire is understood across cultures. Okay, and I'll give what's probably a well-known joke. At the risk of repeating this joke to all of you, I'll say it has nothing to do with market research. The joke is about a Russian person, an English person talking to a Russian audience. Okay, and in English, there's a statement which says, "The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." Right? It really means that if this is something that we want to do, but we're not able to do because of so many constraints. That's the way that statement is generally understood, right? So the Russians were sort of baffled about this because there was an interpreter who was translating that into Russian for certain sections of the audience. He didn't know how to translate this bit, so he thought for a bit, and then he said, "The vodka is good, but the meat is bad. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." Right? So he did a very literal translation and lost the essence of what the sentence is about. So yeah, translation is a key issue. Language is a key issue. Does it come back to education? Not necessarily. You can have highly educated people in respective local languages. Very intelligent people who don't speak English, right? The two don't go hand in hand. So, so we talked about two key considerations here: methods of collecting data and the kind of information that we want to collect. After this, we need to go on to the flow chart, right? So we'll come back to that.